Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. As always, this is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank you for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's go ahead and delve into the topic I have selected for today's program. The Colleyville, Texas synagogue hostage situation that occurred just a couple of days ago is something that is continuing to capture my attention at this time, just as it is, I believe, capturing the attention of the majority of the nation. Reason for this is that we haven't seen this in a long time. Under the Trump administration, we really didn't have that many Islamo-fascist attacks. But now it appears to be coming to the surface again. And there is a familiar pattern that I mentioned during that initial episode that I did that has risen to the surface, which I believe is part and parcel of the usual sort of thing we've seen with respect to this for some time now. Namely, it's that the legacy media doesn't want to admit that these Islamo-fascist terrorists are real, and that they are going to go out of their way to carry water for the Biden administration because they realize that the Biden administration is unpopular, that it's not doing well, and that its popularity is tanking among the ordinary citizenry. And that makes a lot of sense. Biden has made every misstep that is humanly possible since assuming power, and it's only been getting worse with each and every successive passing day. And now that we have this sort of thing happening, it's as though we are delving back into a darker period in our nation's history. But, ladies and gentlemen, it does not stop there. Because it appears that our government should have been forewarned about this and should have had prior knowledge of the danger of the suspect that carried it out, and who fortunately got his head blown off so we don't have to deal with him again, because the British knew about it and had alerted us to it. But it's really fascinating to see how deep this goes. So here we have an article at the Post-Millennial by Hannah Nightingale, and it states that, breaking, Psaki says government had no derogatory information on Texas synagogue terrorists before he entered the U.S. This despite Psaki's claims, however, it has been revealed that the terrorist was known to the British intelligence agencies and that he was once banned from a UK court for a 9/11 rant, and he had a criminal record. You know, ladies and gentlemen, you just can't make this stuff up. You really can't. And the way that they have been handling these sorts of things is nothing short of atrocious. Nothing short of atrocious. It's almost like the Chechnyan Mario brothers, you know, the Boston Marathon bombers. We knew about them, but we had so much information overload from essentially spying on American citizens over and over and over again that it wound up being something that slipped through the cracks. And it slipped through the cracks because they didn't know where to look, because, again, they just were, overly stressed, overly involved, for lack of a better term. But let's continue here, because it goes from bad to worse. In fact, it's going to be interesting to see what is being said. And let me get rid of some of these pop-ups. Gosh, this stuff's annoying. Anyway, following Saturday's hostage standoff in Colleyville, Texas, resulting in the terrorist Malik Fazul Akram, isn't that a good Anglo-Saxon name, being shot and killed, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was questioned on why the United States government did not have any information on Akram, despite him being known to British intelligence agencies. How is it that an individual who was known to MI5 in Britain, who was on a watch list as of 2020, folks, again, you can't make this up, ended up in a synagogue in Texas? How did that happen? One reporter asked.
Then a couple questions on what happened in Texas over the weekend. Sure. How is it that an individual who was known to MI5 in Britain, who was on a watch list as of 2020, ended up in a synagogue in Texas? How did that happen?
Oh, well, our understanding, and obviously we're still looking into this, is that he was checked against U.S. government databases multiple times prior to entering the country, and the U.S. government did not have any derogatory information about the individual in our systems at the time of entry. We're certainly looking back, as I referenced, at what occurred to learn every possible lesson we can to prevent attacks like this in the future. Beyond that, I'd certainly refer you to the Department of Homeland.
Okay, that's not very comforting, is it? Does that seem very comforting? Does it seem like our government's on top of things here, or does it seem like this is a disaster? To me, it seems like we've got a disaster on our hands, that our government is basically playing fast and loose and is attempting to pull the wool over our eyes, as they have been this entire time. That's the issue with the Biden administration. It is almost as though they are caught with their pants down at their ankles over and over again. And, you know, they say they're currently looking back at what happened, but this really isn't promising. It's not reassuring. It's not comforting. An American official briefed on the matter spoke on the condition of anonymity to the New York Times, stating that Akram had been on the watch list of Britain's MI5 security service as a subject of interest in 2020. According to the BBC, Akram was the subject of an investigation in late 2020, but by the time he flew to the U.S., he was assessed to be no longer a risk. Really? He was assessed to no longer be a risk. Why? Because they just arbitrarily chose this? Again, this is just like the Chechnyan Mario brothers. Again, it seems as though they are just bending over backwards merely to be politically correct, and it is resulting in American citizens being harmed, or at least being put in jeopardy. Now, this is not the way that the government is supposed to be. It's not the way that the government is supposed to handle these sorts of situations. Yet, irrespective of that fact, that's what we wind up with. Why? Because this government does not care. This government has its own agenda. And its agenda is a propagandist one. Therefore, the narrative oversteps everything. It overtakes everything. And as a consequence, we are placed at a greater risk. There really is no way around that. He had been designated as a subject of interest in 2020 and was investigated during the latter half of the year. But by 2021, Akram had moved from the active list to the former subject of interest list and was no longer considered a threat. According to the BBC, Akram had a criminal record in the UK. Akram is believed to have entered the U.S. through New York's JFK International Airport 2 weeks ago, police sources told the BBC. He had been the subject of a 4-week short lead investigation, but nothing was found which justified putting him on a higher priority list, they reported. Of course, as we know, on Saturday, Akram took 4 people hostage at Colleyville's Congregation Beth Israel Synagogue, resulting in an hours-long standoff with police and the FBI. At around 9:15 p.m. Central Time, he was shot and killed, with all hostages escaping the situation unharmed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, again, that was a lucky break for us. And I say it was a lucky break for us that no hostages were harmed. Certainly, the great potential was there for it to have happened. There was potential for things to have been a lot worse than they wound up being. Yet, when it's all said and done, this is the government that continues to ask for greater amounts of authority, greater amounts of power, and yet they show us time and again that they are corrupt and that they are incompetent. There is no way around that. And so it has left us in this position of feeling weak and untenable. This, when you also consider that the Biden administration essentially got caught with their pants down in Afghanistan and left us in a very weakened position in the Middle East. There's nothing that is comforting about any of this. There is nothing here that would suggest that we ought to be giving any credence or any more power or authority to this government. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the sort of thing that I believe we have to consider going into the midterm elections. Is this the type of gross incompetence that we want? I don't believe so. Now, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again for choosing to fly with the right flyer. I hope to see you again the next time we fly over the friendly airwaves. Please do take care. See you around.